So hello, today I'm in Purleigh in Essex, just outside Malden, and I would like to talk to you about Lawrence Washington, who was the great-great-grandfather of George Washington, and talk to you about the small village here that he lived in for 12 years. So if you think the Washingtons, at least Lawrence Washington was here for 12 years, it's a long time. I would imagine Rector Lawrence would have walked every part of Purleigh. Now, prestigious Malden, being only 4 miles away by carriage, would have been a great temptation to both Lawrence and his wife Phyllis, with its grand parade of shops and hotels and restaurants, and the magnificent All Saints Church. In Purleigh itself, in the 16th century, it was a very affluent parish, and it was one of the jewels of Essex. Its centrally located Bell Inn, which is in front of us, and the buildings originally were separate houses dating back to the 14th century. So by the time of the Washingtons, it would have been the centre of the community and rather busy. And you can see today that the village is set on a hill, which is dominated by the Bell Inn, the Purleigh Bell I think it's called, and the church, All Saints. So my story actually began 2 years ago. I found myself volunteering, of all things, measuring ancient yew trees. And being from Pedigree in Essex, we're not short of yew trees or churches. So off I went, tape measure and book in hand, and the findings are published on the Ancient Yew Tree Org website. I know it's a strange hobby. I'm often offered a coffee and a chat in the church if it's open. And my adventures have led me to Malden. It's a cracking little Essex town, population 15,000. Malden overlooks the Blackwater estuary with its thick, dark mud, and is famous today for its Malden mud race, which takes place twice a year. I've actually done it. I did it in winter, and it was cold, and you need to be fit, but it's well worth doing. So look it up and have a go. I think all proceeds go to charity, so it's for a good cause. So Malden's old buildings stand shoulder to shoulder like soldiers on parade. Centrally, the All Saints Church stands with its triangular stone tower. It's quite unique, I'm told. I approach the small oak-studded door and turn the barley twist handle, and clunk goes the old latch. As you enter, your eyes feasted on stone arches and columns, inset with carved stone heads of kings and queens long gone. The floor of the church is a patchwork of recycled headstones. Yep, I kid you not. I enter the De Darcy Chapel, built in 1443. There's a stained glass window of such quality it greeted me. The winter sun broke through illuminating the colours. A pamphlet reads, "Washington Memorial Window, to the memory of Lawrence Washington, from the citizens of Malden, Massachusetts, 1928. The Lawrence was in fact the great-great-grandfather of George Washington, and was buried in this church, well, the church in Malden, in 1652. And the church warden told me they didn't know exactly where, but I found it kind of intriguing. Now the Washingtons themselves are an ancient family to England's shores, from the days of 1066 and William the Conqueror. Lawrence's father, in fact, in 1532, was a successful wool merchant in the reign of King Henry VIII. The family home was Soulgrave Manor. It was bought direct from the Crown. And today it survives intact. It's been heavily restored. Lawrence had a good start in life, and by 18 he had enrolled at Brasenose College in Oxford. And by 1627 he graduated to become a teaching fellow in philosophy. On paths yet to meet, a young lady called Amphilis Twigden, along with her 4 sisters and widowed mother Anne, were homeless. Having moved in with the wealthy first cousin Sir Robert Spencer, Amphilis soon became a servant to the Spencers at Pendy Manor in Tring. And then we have a young Washington, or a young Lawrence Washington, that arrives on the scene. He's having travelled 40 miles from Oxford by coach. And he must have fallen for Amphilis, for in 1633 they were married. Lawrence then resigned from his teaching post. His ambition was to become a rector. Now in 1634 Lawrence would have approached All Saints Church in Purleigh just as I am now, via the Tudor porch. Some noisy crows, and right on cue, 10 o'clock. And here we have the porch itself. Now Purleigh is set on a hill, overlooking farmland. And as you've seen, there's a tiny cluster of houses, faithfully wrapping themselves around the Bell Inn and the church, just as it is now. 3 years later, Amphilis would arrive heavily pregnant. By her side, their son John Washington. And so Rector Washington faithfully served for 12 years here at this very church. The Washingtons were faithful supporters of the king, but Essex was a Puritan stronghold, and the Civil War was about to explode. In November 1643, Lawrence was forced out on false charges of being a common frequenter of alehouses. So I guess he was accused of frequenting the Bell Inn, which would have been here. His friends rallied around him, giving him good reference, but to no avail. Lawrence was sent to the poor parish of Little Braxted. Little Braxted is about 11 miles from here. It's near Whittam. His wife and 6 children returned to Tring, and so the saga almost ends. Lawrence struggled to make ends meet for the next 8 years, until his death in 1652. He was aged 50 years of age. The paperwork states, too impoverished to leave an estate that required administration. It's a fascinating tale, I must say. And within a decade, 3 of the children had emigrated to Virginia in America, and we know the rest. Right, I'm just going to show you roughly the landscape here. So, this is the new part of the cemetery, and you can see we're set on a hill. If you look in the distance, that's Malden over there, and if you're looking straight ahead there, that would be the River Blackwater, or the Blackwater Estuary. And in fact, that was where Canute the Great fought against the Saxon king Edmund Ironside in 1016. Sorry, not 1016, I got that bit wrong. Sorry, it's where the Vikings invaded. At the Battle of Malden on Norvey Island, or some say it's Osey Island. Sorry, I got the wrong battle there. Anyway, we'll take a look now in the church itself. Yeah, I'm getting wrong, mixed up there. It was Breitnoff. Breitnoff was the Saxon warrior leader who fought off the Danish Viking. But that's another saga. So here we've the original South Porch, which has not changed. So all that you see is more or less the same as in the time of Lawrence Washington. Obviously this gate would be different. But yeah, this would all be exactly the same. Apart from the electricity, of course. This door, all the stonework is original. You can still see the original heads, which are heavily weathered due to being no porch for hundreds of years. So we've got a lovely small handle here. Yeah, and this will be the parish church of Lawrence, Washington for 12 years. So we're now in the south aisle. And if you look, you can see the columns, the piers are leaning heavily. Now we're in the central nave. And straight ahead we have the chancel. There's the Albury there, where the bread and wine, I believe, will be kept. It's the high altar. These are the sediles, I believe, where the priest would sit. If we walk around, now we're onto the north aisle. It's a beautiful old pulpit there. You can see ancient carvings from the past. Here we have the north door. Right, so we'll walk through now. Now in the west corner of the south aisle, we've got the Lord's Prayer and the font itself. Now if I squeeze past, first we have the rectors and patrons of Purleigh, and goes back to William 1220. And you can see it goes on and on. Incredible. And here we have picture of Lawrence and his wife. And this is Mary Ball, Washington. This is the mother, George Washington. We have a picture of George Washington himself in a lovely gilt carved frame, presented to Purleigh Church by Providence Washington Insurance Company through the good offices of Miss A. Livesey of Compton, RI, 1929. And then beneath that we have an interesting Pedigree Ancestry Board which has been made up, and this is relating to George Washington, how he's related to Winston Spencer Churchill, famous Prime Minister of Great Britain or England. And you can see, as we were talking about, Soulgrave Manor, Colonel John Washington, Captain Lawrence Washington, Captain Augustine Washington, George Washington, and then on the other side we have how he's connected to Robert Royston, Lancashire, the Spencers. It's fascinating history here, all the way down, Prime Minister United Kingdom. And on this side we have descendants of George Washington from King John and 9 Magna Carta barons. It's hard to see that, but it's an impressive family tree. Huge amount of research gone into that. So we'll come back out. You can just see the age of this door. This is really not changed at all. You can actually see some of the original graffiti. That to me looks a bit Elizabethan period. And the stone jams. So yep, 12 years he was here, so, and the family, along with his children and his wife. We'll have a quick look outside. Proper noisy crows, gotta say. I believe this window section here is 14th century stained glass section. It's made up from broken segments. And you can see a blocked up south doorway there. I personally find church structures very interesting to look at, how they've been modified over the centuries and extensions and new additions have been made. And you can see that they would utilise anything that they could get their hands on. So these are just fairly modern tiles. You can also see how the weather wears away the stonework, and over the centuries repairs were made just to keep it as original as possible. It's quite interesting. What's quite unusual here is there are two giant redwood trees. There's one straight ahead, and there's one on the east side here, which is there. And you can see the proximity to the Bell pub, which is basically here. Gives you an idea of the size of these redwood trees. So today Purleigh is, from what I can see, is quite a small but lively little village. That's well worth a drop into the local pub and have a look at this church. Thank you very much.